Hello and welcome to another episode of the Best You interview series. It's Gary here. Again, thank you very, very much for taking the time to join me today. And today I'm joined by entrepreneur and creator of the high performance strategy, coaching and elite mindset programs Scaling Without Sacrifice, Courtney Intersimone, to discuss her work with leaders who are looking to grow and scale without losing themselves in the journey. I think I could use a lot of this help, to be honest. Courtney had
We all can.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Courtney had a thriving corporate career that took an unexpected turn, leading her to the emergency room after a panic episode in the workplace, leading her to question what she truly wanted from life. And the experience ended up serving as the pivotal wake up that Courtney didn't know that she needed at the time, and set the frame for her to get crystal clear about what her value is, what she really wanted in her life, and what she wasn't going to let get in the way of her greatness. Courtney decided to wean herself off of what people think, develop a steadfast belief in her own potential, and learned that the anxiety that in many ways fueled her did not need to be a constant companion to ensure ongoing growth and success. Courtney created her own business, which involves designing and delivering high-performance coaching programs to rocket people to their next level. Since then, Courtney has helped countless professionals scale in their career, income, and life with a sense of purpose and with ample energy and presence to thoroughly enjoy the ride with more ease and grace. You know what I love about that is that it's all very, very person-centric, and some of it really truly goes in the face of some of the business gurus that we all probably know and love, that say a version of no pain, no gain, and
Right.
it's all about the hustle, and it's all about doing what needs to be done when it needs to be done to get you to where you want to get to. And I love the angle of saying it doesn't have to be like that. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. Courtney, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, Gary, thanks so much for having me. Really
No, it's my
glad
pleasure.
to be here.
Absolutely. My pleasure. So I gave just a snippet of your journey there. And when you and I had the opportunity to chat prior to recording, we went in a wee bit deeper in terms of what happened in your corporate career. Like everything was looking like it had a particular trajectory. Everything was going the way that it was, if I could say, supposed to go.
Yeah.
And then you have this moment. So tell me a little bit about what led up to that, and then how things have manifested themselves since.
So what led up to that particular moment, or you want me to give a little bit more of the backstory, like
Yeah,
how
a
I
little
even
bit of the
started?
backstory, please.
Yeah. So funny, not funny. And I won't bore you with every part of the journey, but things do come full circle, which is why I want to tell you that early on, before I started working within the corporate world, and when I was pursuing my undergraduate and graduate degrees, I was interested in being a psychologist, and I earned degrees in psychology, in counseling psychology at the master's level. And I always envisioned that I would be working one-on-one with people, maybe in small groups, but in counseling and advising them in some way.
Yeah.
That was my original passion. And when I was finishing my graduate program, I had an experience working at a bank that at the time, it was Chemical Bank, for those who are old enough to remember Chemical Bank, which is now part of JP Morgan Chase. But at the time, they had their own outplacement counselors, career counselors for people who were losing their jobs. And the gentleman who was running it was in my graduate program. And so he sponsored me for my practicum. And the point was, I really saw a way for me to be involved in counseling and advising people around their careers. And I thought, wow, this is a really great mix of what I want to do, but also being in the business world, which was becoming more and more important and intriguing to me. But I was quite young, and I hadn't had enough, experience in the real world, I felt, to be in a position to truly advise people on the ups and downs of managing their careers. And I thought, you know what, let me get some experience living and being in the, Fortune 200 world and really understanding what that's like. And by coincidence, I ended up within another banking institution. This was not by plan, but somehow I end up working on Wall Street, and I'm in a human human resources capacity. And I thought, well, I'm going to just do this for a couple of years, famous last words, and we'll see. And then I'll get back to doing what I thought I was going to be doing. Well, a couple of years turned into 26 years. And, I had phenomenal opportunity. Earlier than most, I was working with C-suite level leaders and, had an opportunity to play significant roles during, a full-scale merger of equals between the organization I originally joined and a peer organization in the industry, and so many things in between. But my point is, I fell in love with the people that I was working with. And I also really was continuing to be challenged along the way. And I was growing in my own, leadership, and frankly, getting rewarded quite well also financially. So that certainly helps. And so that's part and parcel of why what started as I'll just do this for a couple of years, get a little bit of experience, ended up being a full career within its own right. In the back of my mind, though, through those years, there was this voice, for want of a better term, that said, okay, this is all fantastic, but I still, I'm missing having the opportunity to have the majority of my time focused on working in a one-on-one capacity with another human being, and in a way in which I can help them get what they want and be unencumbered by working within a larger, I'll just say, organization that, has its own, I'm trying to find the right word. I was helping a lot of people while I was on the inside, but there was a broader organizational agenda that I had to represent. And I'm not saying that agenda was evil or negative necessarily, but it would often be at odds with what the individual person needed and wanted, what was going to be, best for them in their life. My point in sharing all this is to say I was having a great professional experience. But there was always this recognition that was this what I was going to do for the rest of my God-given, time. Fast forward to this point of the panic attack, which I do share on my website pretty openly. I was not someone who had suffered any kind of panic attacks before, and I was already well into my 40s, so this was a bit of a shocker. And I had certainly worked under enormous levels of stress and strain before, and I was no stranger to working 60-hour weeks. So I couldn't quite understand why was this moment in time seemingly more anxiety provoking than any other. And I don't know that I really have the answer to that, to be perfectly frank. But that experience was a wake-up call on a variety of levels. One of the things that I learned, at the moment that this was happening, I was leading a quarterly strategy, offsite session for the executive leadership team that I was a part of. But part of my role was designing it, but I'm leading it. And I suddenly became overwhelmed and had to leave the room, quietly. I didn't make a scene, and I just left, and, the rest is history after that. But I was in so much discomfort that I sort of in the moment didn't care too much what anyone thought, because I just needed to feel, better. But then I was, as anyone might be, a bit embarrassed, like, what's wrong? Why am I feeling so, out of control? And what will everyone think? And, will people think that I can't handle it, whatever it is? Meanwhile, I've been handling it for, 20 some odd years at that point quite well. And, I just want to say, because there's a lot of it's easy from afar for people to assume that, the corporate world is just one big, cold place where no one cares about anyone else. And that's not really true. And I had, great support from my peers on that leadership team and my boss who, was, the global head of human resources, who never once made me think that they thought less of me or that I could handle things. And in fact, I remember speaking to my boss in the days afterwards, and she was like, "I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, this just happened. It's not a big deal." And, and so I just want to say for the record, I felt tremendously supported.
Yeah.
And I got myself sorted out and got the, whatever was triggering this explosion of anxiety, got that under control. In partnering with some doctors and so forth. But yeah, it did make me pause and say, well, how many other people who look like they have it all together? And I did in many ways. I mean, it wasn't like I was falling apart at the seams, but are struggling or having some moment of perceived weakness that they don't feel like they can ask anyone for help because they think it's going to, diminish their chances or diminish them in the eyes of those around them. And so that kind of got me thinking about, gee, it's not that I don't love what I'm doing, but am I spending my time and energy on the things that really matter most in terms of what I'm here to do and who I'm here to help, right? And you can be good at a lot of things, but it doesn't mean that it's the highest and best use of who you are in this lifetime. And so I think that experience was sort of the first jolt of, is this, maybe I've gotten off track a bit. Now, having that said, that was in 2017. I continued on with the organization for another 4 years and, had a lot of additional expansion in my role and accountabilities and my own growth and leadership after that, which I also think was really important because I needed to know that I didn't just fall down and then say, okay, maybe this isn't for me anymore. I need to walk away, because that wasn't really the truth. It was just more of a recognition that, is this all there is for me? And that thing that had been sort of in the back of my mind for all these years about what really is the, like I keep saying, the best and highest use of some of the gifts that I have, and that's going to bring me the most fulfillment. Was there a mismatch there? In between all of this, of course, we had other events that we were all impacted by, namely COVID. And, for me, I think the COVID experience, in terms of that also making you pause and say, what's it all about? Anyway, what are we doing? Coupled with a milestone birthday, and really saying, am I going to wait until I'm 70 years old or 80 years old to start this other journey that's been calling to me for the last 20 years? And for me, I said, no, I don't want to continue to put this off. And so then it was more about tactics of, okay, this all sounds great, but how do I make the transition from what I am doing, into my own practice and make that vision a reality? And it's been 4 years now, and it's still in growth mode. It's been a great ride, but you're talking to somebody who never ever in her life would have thought that I would have left the so-called security of a W-2 kind of a role to take the chance to branch out on my own. But and I don't want to say I have it all figured out, but I'm proud of what I've been able to shift and accomplish in that regard, and continue to learn every day. And I know that I'm able to direct the vast majority of my energy towards working one-on-one with other human beings who are going through some moment of fracture, or, waking up to, wait, this isn't what I thought it was, or this isn't working the way I thought it was. Helping those people navigate that landscape and thrive beyond it is a great joy for me. So I don't know if that's what you're looking for. I know I went on there for a while.
Fabulous. No, that's amazing. And you're absolutely right, Courtney, in terms of full circle moment, to get to that spot where your experience aligns with your education and, of course, your base passion to be able to get to do what you want to do. And it's so much in there in terms of, I teach undergrad at the University of Calgary, and when you had mentioned earlier, you didn't feel that you had quite enough experience or maturity, possibly even, just to be able to say this is how it goes.
Yeah.
I would be really interested, because a lot of times they're in the exact same boat, and I remember being around about that age and just kind of thinking, I could do anything. Because not that I live a life of comparison, but there is a level of kind of looking at other people at the same age and stage as me and kind of going, I can do this, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. And not everyone can do all of those things.
Right.
But then it genuinely becomes a worldwide perception issue where they're saying, like, what have you done? Like, you haven't done anything. I can't just take academic reference and then the fact that you seem to be a good communicator and, as
right.
credibility ultimately there, so then it becomes, but then I start to feel like I sound like an old fart, when I say, well, you need to pay your dues. You need to go out there and have experiences and live life and know and understand how things go and don't go, to give yourself that opportunity to be empathic and help.
Yeah, I mean, well, actually, I don't know if you had a question in there, but I it's funny because the mentor that I had in that practicum, as we called it, working in that, it's like having an outplacement firm, except it was a subset of the organization. Anyway, he was very encouraging, and he was trying to challenge my own assumptions about that I needed to go get this other experience before I could advise people and, on the career stuff and whatnot. Sure, I think in some ways I could have, but there's a richness to perspective. And, I count myself as a very empathic person and always was from a very young age. So the empathy is there, but there's a different visceral quality to it when, as I like to say, life has kicked you in the teeth a few times, and or you've been present for what really happens. Again, I'm not saying it's anything sinister, but the realities of, again, after all those within the course of those 26 years, and particularly because of the role that I was in within human resources, oftentimes I was involved in decisions about, unfortunately, we were going to do layoffs. Yeah. And not only decisions about it, but the one to sit across the table from somebody who had given a goodly number of years to the organization, who maybe a year or two before was considered, the high flyer, the high potential person, or whatever it was. And then you see there's the change in deck chairs, change in, who's calling the shots. And suddenly that person is, not that they're seen to be failing per se, but they're seen to be expendable. Let's put it that way. And then you sit across from them and you relay this news and you see the impact on their psyche. And again, I'm not here to make a treatise about it's right or wrong to lay off people, all this. I'm talking about the perspective that you gain, or that I certainly gained, seeing just the day-to-day realities. Yeah. I didn't have that same perspective when I was 25 years old. I mean,
Yeah.
you kind of knew, but it's different than a lived experience. It's different than a lived experience of being the one who's got to walk into the room and tell one of your best friends
Mhm.
who's on your team, they're the ones going next.
Yeah.
It's different from when you've got to walk in a room and tell someone who works for you, whose visa depends on this job, I'm sorry, but you're being terminated for cause because you did da 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 da.
Mhm.
I'm not saying those decisions to terminate were wrong. I'm not here to debate that. Generally speaking, they are, for very different reasons, they are the quote right business decision to make.
Mhm.
But getting back to experience or not, when you see how someone can become so engulfed in self-doubt and questioning themselves, even when they know it's not personal,
Yeah.
or you see, I've been talking about extreme cases when people lose their jobs, but any number of different restructurings, and someone might maintain their role, but now, they're layered
Yeah.
for whatever reason. Really appreciating the individual stories and seeing that happen, and also being subject to what happens when a new sheriff is in town. There's a new CEO. Now the entire executive team over the course of the next year changes. Why everyone 2 or 3 layers below is feeling anxiety about that. I didn't have any of those. I didn't have that awareness when I was 25. And I think that all feeds into just a deeper, as I said, visceral appreciation of the fear that people have at times about their career, why they're clinging on so strongly, in spite of the fact that maybe they're really suffering and maybe they'd be better served by making a different choice for themselves. So, yeah, you don't get that from a textbook.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the thing that would set someone like you apart, Courtney, from other people is the level of observation and the level of absorption and the intention to create an experience from these experiences.
Yeah.
Because all too often I've seen people have somewhat similar experiences, maybe in a different industry, but the types and styles of examples that you were discussing there, and they just kind of, I don't know what the best word is, coast through the experience. They get to the other side, they go, that was quite awkward and difficult,
Right.
and
Let's
they just
keep
move on.
moving.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't want
and
to
they move
dwell on
on.
it too much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and exactly, and
Yeah.
that the opportunity for someone, with that introspection, with that, what can I give and what can I get from this experience, and how is that all going to manifest itself? Whether it's purely intentional in the moment, it seems to be that's the way that you're built, which then manifests itself into this wonderful package that you have,
Thank
with
you.
experience and qualification and empathy
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
observation, to be able to unlock these analogous stories and or experiences, to be able to say to people what you're feeling is absolutely normal.
Yeah.
And that's, when someone says it's not personal, of course it's personal. It's personal
Right.
to you because it happened to you,
Exactly.
and
It's the most
then,
ludicrous statement to say it's not personal. I mean, you know what is meant by it, but yes,
of
it is
course,
very personal. Yeah.
yeah,
It has big
absolutely,
ramifications. I mean,
yeah,
yeah. And there's just so many things, you know, I don't want to take us too off course, but, I do want to share related to all of this. Well before I was a working person, in the big world of corporate America, um, I had, some early experiences observing my father, who was a teacher. Both my parents were teachers, so I didn't know anything about the world of business.
mm,
But my father was a teacher. He wanted to be a teacher. He had some really significant, mentors and teachers in his own life growing up that made such a positive difference for him that, that this was like his way of keeping that legacy going and giving to other people. And he was teaching English at a public school at the secondary level in the high school. And the district that he was teaching in, I mean, as far as I knew, I was quite young at the time, so I didn't fully get all this. But my understanding over the years was he worked in a school district that was shrinking in size. And there may have been other elements. But as a result, every year, they had to excess was the term they used, meaning there are certain, we can't keep the same staff that we had. We have too many people. Right. So it was a strict sort of tenure-based, last in, first out kind of decision. So those people who had the lower amounts of tenure, they could be the greatest teacher on earth, but, sorry, we've got 25 of you, we need 20. And my dad, therefore, was excessed for several years in a row, only to then get hired again by the end of the summer, or sometimes it was like right after Labor Day, which is when school starts here in the Northeast. And my point in sharing this is that from a very early age, I just saw this, and he wasn't, like I said, it wasn't even in the corporate world. We could argue this was in the kinder, gentler nation of, what could be better than being a teacher, and isn't it all smiles over there. And I watched the impact that it had on him, on our family. Like, it didn't matter how good he was at what he did, but to be at a place where you can give everything to your vocation, to your job, and still find yourself without a means for making a living and providing for your family. And that sort of, even if it's not personal, it again feels very personal, and you start to question yourself and like, why am I going through this? Now, I could observe this as an adult now and ask other questions like, why did you stay in that district? Why didn't you go somewhere else? Blah, blah, blah. Maybe there were things he could have done. But that's not relevant to my point here. My point was I got tuned in very early in life, observing that, and observing someone who, of course, I admired and thought was, fantastic, go through this, fairly traumatic kind of experience. And I think, and he, listen, I could give you a list of his flaws, God rest his soul. I'm not saying the guy was perfect, but as a young person, you tend to idolize your parents. And it is fact, he was an incredibly gifted, intelligent person, and a person of great depth and character. And recognizing that in and of itself isn't enough to guarantee professional success has been another thread for me that I've wanted to convey to other people, because I meet a lot of people who are amazing human beings, and they're very talented, and they work really hard, and they do all the right things, and they still might end up on the wrong side of whatever, some transaction or something doesn't go their way. And then they start to kind of question themselves or say it's not fair. And my role is to say, you don't have to question yourself. And it may not be fair, but let's deal with what is. And it is a big world out there, and there are other doors to open for yourself. And don't be defined by this one particular context that you find yourself in. Like, take the lesson. Maybe there is something to be learned, but don't get stuck in the naive belief that merit alone is going to, get you where you want to go. And I know that sounds a bit bleak, but I'd rather have people deal with reality and not turn it into a battering ram against themselves when it doesn't have to. So.
Yeah. And I think, it's a real dose of reality. Certainly merit and success and, if I could say popularity, or, you're like easy to work with. And they're not going to do you any harm whatsoever, regardless of what happens. It just might not be here anymore, but you've created a reputation, you've created a network, you've created a a portfolio of success of some description,
Yes.
and it becomes one of these. I think back to the students again, Courtney, where I'm thinking, this is a lesson that I should weave in for them in terms of their career, is to say, pick your career carefully, do the best you can with the information that you have at the time, but know that things can change very, very quickly, and your role might not exist as that role anymore. AI is the hot topic of the day.
Oh, yeah.
And, so be savvy about what that is. Ask some questions of people in that particular industry that you're targeting, or maybe the organization, and then make an informed decision, and then keep your eyes and ears open, and then pay attention and try and see around a corner if you can. And then you have if you have a semblance of control to say, this doesn't look good. I'll just provide an example. This doesn't look good for right now. It looks like we're going to be marginalized and or eliminated at some point within the next 24 to 36 months. I'm going to ride it out, and I'm going to just see how it goes, because I love it here and there's a lot to learn while I'm still here, and I'll start to keep my options open and keep my keep my network kind of warm outside. Or, you know what? I don't like the look of this. I don't like how it's making me feel today. I can't imagine it's going to make me feel any better in 24 or 36 months. So I'm going to start to make that informed choice and change just now. It's all about, for me, awareness and control. What can you control, and then what can you intentionally do or act like or act towards to say, this is the best thing that's going to serve me and my career and my options and opportunities as we go forward. And a lot of times there's just so much information out there that we already have access to that we're not tapping into. And that goes back to what I was saying about you and your ability to absorb and really, truly learn the lessons as you're going forward, and just tuck them into your tool belt and say, I don't need it for right now, but I think this will be valuable for me and or someone else at some point in the future. Not everyone's doing that.
Yeah. I guess I take it a little bit for granted. Thank you for that reflection. I mean, I was going to say, I want to help people take back a sense of control over their destiny, and not give so much away to the power structures around them. I know that sounds a bit lofty, but it's not about, how do I put this? There's always going to be circumstances and power structures and whatever outside of you, and you can't be blind to what those are. But you don't have to live day by day in a state of waiting for the other shoe to drop, or giving away all your power to these outside forces. What I encourage people to do is focus on the things, I mean, this sounds so trite, but it's true. Focus on the things that you can control.
Yeah.
Right? And focus on the things that you don't lose when you go from one company to another, which is your portfolio of skills and experiences and your way of leading in the world. And, how much are you investing in time-wise or financially in your own growth and development? Don't wait for somebody to do it for you. Don't sit and wait for your company to sponsor you, and whether it be an executive MBA program or a leadership development program. I mean, of course, if those become available to you, by all means, take advantage of that great opportunity, but don't sit waiting for someone else to do it to you. You said there's a lot of information out there. Yes, there is. And there's a lot of resources in a lot of ways, more so than ever before in life, where we can equip ourselves with, skills and experiences and, perspectives that add to the value that we can bring to any situation that we face. And, again, I fear that I'm a little bit all over the place here, but this also ties into this whole notion of security.
Yeah.
And, security and belief that any one organization is your security.
Mhm.
It's not.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not here to preach for or advocate everyone becoming like a selfish renegade. That's not my point either. Like, wherever you are, be all in,
Yeah.
right? But that doesn't mean blind loyalty. It doesn't mean not continuing to look out for yourself.
Mhm.
You should always be nurturing and expanding the relationships you have. I don't love the word network. I know we all know what networking means, but it carries such negative connotation for some people as shallow and transactional. But really, if you can just focus on continuing to develop and nurture relationships both within your organization, more broadly in your industry or your profession, and really focus on how can I be helpful here? What can I do to contribute to this person, to this team, to this whatever? Then, and you lead with how can I create value? Then that's what your security is.
Yeah.
Not any one organization, because that's just not reality. Again, I'm not advocating. I mean, hell, I stayed at a place for 26 years. I wasn't doing that because I was trying to be loyal.
Mhm.
I had a lot of great opportunities. If I hadn't, maybe I would have moved. You've got to be willing to move, though. You can't get so attached to one place because the changes are going to keep coming,
Yeah.
and you don't want to be caught short.
Yeah.
And also, I think part of the stress, getting back to the stress part of the equation, goes to, oh my God, I have to make it work here or else.
Mhm.
It's like, you got to make the best of what you can there, or else you will find a different place to,
Yeah.
to bring your value to. I'm not saying it's easy, but I think it's dangerous to get too attached to any one place and put all of your growth and expansion in the hands of one particular organization, one particular management team, because you may not be their number one concern at any given time. So anyway, I don't want to go negative, but I'm
Yeah.
just really big on people, helping people to really connect with their own gifts and talents and look for ways to nurture and grow those independent of whatever organization they're in. Always be giving, always be, continuing to be visible, have a point of view in your industry. And again, ground yourself in, am I able to add value here? And if the reciprocity doesn't feel like it's there for you, like you're not getting equal value in return, okay, then it's a big world out there. Start
Yeah.
exploring where else. And you don't have to do it from a place of bitterness.
Yeah.
It's just more, I'm not sure this is the best context for me anymore. And so I'm going to start, exploring where else I can take this. But that's you being in charge of your future and your career, not just sort of waiting to receive
Yeah.
what any one organization is going to do. Does this make sense?
Absolutely, 100% it does, and it's a great segue into your practice that you have now. What types and styles of individuals and or groups are you seeing? Are you serving
Yeah.
for right now?
Yeah. So right now, I have focused my work back on individual private coaching. I did for a little while do some group work. I may reintroduce that, but for now, I've been focusing on the one-to-one work. So it's very
Yeah.
customized to each person's particular set of circumstances. I would have to check my roster to be certain, but I would say I'm probably about 60-40 men to women.
Right.
And I love working with both. I don't really have a particular gender focus. And I just want to say on that, I don't want to open this whole debate. There are certain, due to socialization and societal expectations, some real material differences between a woman and a man's experiences in the professional world and managing that with, life outside of the professional arena. I can acknowledge all of that. At the same time, a lot of the challenges that each face are no different. Um, you know, a lot of times, people will assume that women have more of an issue with things like imposter syndrome, and I would say that that's not really true. That that I find that with both genders. But anyway, getting back to my current practice, so it's about 60-40 men and women. They are typically in their mid 40s is probably the youngest, with a couple of exceptions. But mid 40s and up, I've also worked with people, who are 60, 62, I think is probably the upper end of the range, helping folks who, were seemingly no longer needed at their current organization, land and get their next great opportunity, even at 62. I'm not saying that that's easy, but it is certainly doable. And it's a mix of folks who are, they're typically, it varies depending on the organization they're with, but they're all in some kind of, large scale corporate organization. That's what I know best. And so I tend to work with people who are in those environments. And it's usually people who are at some sort of inflection point. Either they've been, either they perceive that their role is in jeopardy, or they've recently been through a layoff,
Right.
or there's been a shakeup organizationally, and they are anticipating that could create a problem for them.
Yeah.
Or even if they don't think it's going to be a problem, they're experiencing the fact that suddenly their biggest sponsors, are no longer there, and
Yes.
they're not quite sure what to do now that there's been a significant change in the direction and leadership of the overall organization. Most of the people that I work with are probably 1 to 3 layers beneath the CEO of the organization in terms of where they fall into the structure.
Yeah.
So that they've achieved a lot. They're already pretty senior, but there's something that's happened where they're feeling like, I don't know how, either I feel like there's been a fall from grace or a fall from favor, really is a better way of putting it, or I've suddenly and abruptly been finding myself caught up in a layoff, and like now my confidence is shattered, and I don't quite know what to do. Or there's a recognition that, wow, there's a new sheriff in town, and while I had most favored nation status last week, I guess I'm going to have to prove myself all over again. Or how do I navigate this realignment and still come out, on top?
Yeah.
And then I also have execs who get, promoted into much bigger roles within their organization. So it's a great vote of confidence. Or they just landed a position, somewhere else, not because they were laid off, but they made a move. And, like a woman who I'm working with now, who's heading global recruiting at a firm, she reached out to me and she's like, this is the biggest job I've had. I'm excited and I don't want to mess it up.
Yeah.
So it's any one of those permutations of things. And, my job is to help give people a clear roadmap, give them the tactics of what they need to do, and importantly, get underneath, because what I find is most people, the tactics isn't really the issue. I mean, there's a certain bit of like, oh, I didn't know that was a way that I could approach a networking contact or whatever. I mean, right. But the bigger problem usually is what's going on up here.
Yeah.
And the self-talk that they have about why they can or cannot do X, Y, Z, or the assumptions that they're making about, some offhanded comment that their boss made or some peer made. And now they're like, what does that actually mean? Or I'm assuming it means something really negative, and, maybe it doesn't, whatever it is, it's what's going on up here that's usually having the greatest impact on whether or not the person can adapt and continue to thrive at the next level of leadership, or, in a new organization. And so we spent a lot of time unpacking, what is it that you're telling yourself in XYZ situation? What are you making this situation mean?
Yeah.
Is that in fact true? Could it be something else? And, as I like to say, broadening the aperture, helping them broaden the aperture on seeing a broader range of ways in which they could behave, respond, and keep moving, versus sort of just like automatically doing what they always did and not having it work so well sometimes. So does that answer your question?
Definitely, yeah. The main word that came up for me there was distractions. When people get into their own head, it becomes very, very distracting and very, very time consuming.
Yes.
And actually consuming in general, energy consuming, emotional consumption, and the like. And it's trying to get them. I did a social media video recently that's basically a culmination of my life experience and the education work that I've done recently.
Yeah.
And it's kind of abrupt. It's basically just saying no one's thinking about you as much as you think they're thinking about you.
Nobody cares. Yeah, exactly.
And I tried to put it in a more progressive context, to say, this is not a shock jock type thing of to try and grab your attention or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's just to say, it's actually true. It's a fact. If you think about how much you're thinking about other people, it's maybe a fleeting thought once or twice a day, a week, a month, whatever. It depends on the context, of course. And it's one of these things, if you genuinely, really, truly grasp that and then start to look at, back to what we were saying earlier about information being readily available, if you start to look for examples of that, through previous experiences and such, and get that realization to say, so maybe as you're working with a client and you're saying, how true is that? What could there possibly be another intention or meaning behind that?
Right.
Which is then going to fashion what their actions are going to be next. That they can maybe add that in to say, I think I know what you're going to say, and I think you're going to say how true, and I've actually done some investigation work. So they're already pre-building the work in, which is a good segue. I was going to ask you, what would you say would be the biggest resistance factors that your clients bring if they're from the spectrum of potentially considering a move, thinking that might be forced into a move, they've been forced into a move, or they're looking to grow and they're new. You're getting a lot of people from a lot of different areas within the corporate experience. When you're working with them and trying to get them to open up to new ways of thinking and provide themselves with better opportunities, is there a common resistance that you see or feel, Courtney?
That's a good question. I mean, one thing that's coming to mind, and this is more on the tactic piece a bit, one of the places where most folks that I work with feel very uncomfortable is with, well, two things. One is visibility. Now, what does that mean? These are people who've already been in pretty senior leadership roles, so it's not that they're hiding in a closet somewhere. They're used to being visible, but I mean visibility in terms of, being more intentional and proactive around getting their point of view out there into the world. And probably even more so than that, there's a lot of resistance around laying claim to their achievements.
Right.
Because, and it varies from person to person, but I think many of us have been socialized to believe that it's not polite to seem like you're bragging. Your work should speak for itself. You shouldn't have to shine a light on it. So that is a big point of resistance for many. And then the other is around, the relationship building, and let's use the N word, in this case, networking, where people just either they're like, I know I should have been really keeping up with building my network, but I've just been so heads down doing the work, like I haven't. So they sort of feel like guilty and bad, but now it seems like, how do I even start? Or, I don't want to seem like I'm just asking for something. I'm like, well, then don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I'm too busy, or why is anyone going to want to talk to me? I don't know. There's a lot of resistance around that. And by the way, I say this as a dyed-in-the-wool introvert who on any given day would far rather sit on my couch, and read a book than go to some big networking event. I get it, but this is why, it's tough, because when people come to me, they are those who are in a job search phase, they are under pressure, and it's a hard time to start, reinvigorating your network. It can be done. I show them how to do it, but I also explain, like, it's not flipping a switch. You're not going to get results overnight.
Yeah.
If I had to make a campaign out there, it would be, please pay attention to, again, cultivating and nurturing your professional relationships as like a regular habit, whether you're looking for something or not, because it, again, I don't want it to sound transactional, but it does pay dividends over time. But this is a long-term project. So, but again, coming back to, what do people resist? They resist doing that proactive reaching out to people, because it feels awkward. And so we try to work around, how do we make it feel less awkward, and how do you get comfortable with the fact that you're not going to hear from everybody. You're not going to get a return message from everybody, but 20% of the time you will. So, and don't make it mean something about you that you didn't hear from all these other people. It's just, that's the way life is. Those are the two that come to mind right now. There are probably others, but it's the visibility, the proclaiming, the fact that you created certain impacts, and doing that in a way that feels natural and not bragging. And then also, managing your professional relationships and growing and expanding those. Those are the two biggest pain points.
And trying to really, as you say, make it part of what you do and who you are. One thing that I'll say to mostly to students, sometimes to clients as well, it really depends on the context, is, I want to hear this. I would genuinely be interested. And if you've got one person interested in your story, there's probably 2 or 3 or 10 or 100 or 500. You don't ever know. And I would love to hear how your undergrad is going. I'd love to hear about your plans for the future. I'd love to hear about the bumps in the road and the study patterns and the successes and the failures and what you've learned throughout the journey. And that's from a student perspective. And from anyone else, is to try and then say a version of, like, why are you keeping all this to yourself? Someone out there needs to hear this. Someone out there wants to hear that, and they will get a nugget from that to say, I never thought about that way, or I really should reach out. And and to the other point of reaching out in terms of the community or the networking and such, it's that opportunity, to basically say, well, think about this way. How many times have you had an email and you think, I'm going to mark that as unread and I'm going to get back to Courtney as quickly as I can, and then before you know it, Courtney goes off of the first page and the second page.
You don't see her anymore.
You don't see it, and then eventually maybe you have an epiphany, or you come across it at some point, and then you're thinking, oh my word, it's been 7.5 months since you sent that.
And then
I'm
you feel
so
guilty.
sorry. And then, but you don't know what they've been going through for that 7.5 months. He hates me. He doesn't like. I'm not respected. I'm not. He never liked me in the first place. He said that he would help if he could. So anytime I'm ever speaking to anyone and I say, if you email me and I don't email you back within like 48 to 72 hours, email me again.
Exactly.
Please email me again, and I promise I will reply. And that's carte blanche for everyone. So this has been a tremendous conversation, and I could literally go on for hours and hours. We're unpacking so much here. But as you know, it's called The Best You. And what I like to do is take this opportunity to ask each of the guests, what's a regular practice that Courtney employs to give her the best opportunity to be the best version of herself?
I think for me, it's learning all the time, but
Yeah.
not just through, educate yourself. There's so much available to us, whether it's reading, whether it's watching videos, on a certain subject, skills that you want to learn.
Yeah.
So that's a regular part of my practice. Another really important part of my practice, though, is I always am in some kind of mastermind group and working with a coach myself. That has been instrumental in me, even before I left corporate, in terms of me stepping up
Yeah.
in my leadership roles and doing so with as much grace as possible and learning while I was stepping into the highly visible roles. But also, it's been, I don't think I would have been able to make the transition to running my own business and continuing to grow that business without being in a community of other peers under the guidance of someone who's a little bit further along than we are,
Yes.
where we both support and challenge, but I mean that in a loving way. It's like, we're not going to let one another hide from our best version of ourselves or our dreams.
Yeah.
And we're there to give the gentle nudge, to cheer on, to help hold the vision for each of us, even when I'm feeling like, I don't know if I can do this. But
Yeah.
being in surrounding yourself with people who also are going for big things, who
Yeah.
are also pushing themselves out of their comfort zone, is so important. And so, all of that, being in the right community, investing in coaching, to be with someone who's not going to let me get away with stopping my own growth because comfort feels more important.
Yeah.
And continuing to do things that make me feel uncomfortable. None of this is original, but it definitely is key to living out all your potential.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that I have always been, since youth, for reasons unknown to me, but kind of darkly obsessed with the reality that life passes by quickly.
Yes.
I've been lucky. I haven't faced, any kind of near-death experience or terminal illness or that kind of thing. But somehow, as I said, I've just always been awake to the fact that things go so quickly. And I think it's helpful, much as the Stoics would say, and I forget which one had the quote about, memento mori, like remember that you will die, which sounds very grim, but the point is life is now.
Yes.
And I know for myself, I don't want to feel like I didn't do everything that I could have or wanted to do. And so I also think keeping that present, again, not to be depressing or dark, but just as a, hey, like, are you doing everything that you can to make the most of all the gifts you've been given? Keeping that present is also, a practice for me. So there you go.
I love it. Absolutely fantastic. Courtney, where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, the best place I spend pretty much all of my time on LinkedIn in terms of social media presence. So come follow me on LinkedIn or connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a DM. I post every day. So hopefully there are some useful nuggets for people on this journey. And then, by all means, reach out to me. Just send me an email, Courtney@CourtneyIntersimone.com. I imagine you'll have that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Those are the two best places to get in contact with me.
Terrific. Courtney, this has been an absolute blast. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to join me today.
That's my pleasure. You made it very fun and very easy. So thank you so much, Gary. Great to be here.
Hello again. Thanks again for tuning in to this episode, and I do hope that you found it valuable and gained some insights. I do have an ask for you. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would absolutely love it if you would connect with me on my socials, and that's at LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Just search for my name and do whatever it is you need to do there to follow me and stay updated with all the latest content, tips, and discussions. And for any more resources that you're looking for, feel free to visit my website, garygillen.com. And while you're there, you can book a free, no obligation 30-minute coaching call directly with me through the site. Whether you're looking to enhance your performance or tackle a new challenge, I'm absolutely here to help you succeed, and I would absolutely love to hear from you. Thanks very much again, and until next time, keep pushing towards your goals and getting better each and every day, my friend.